Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Pokrovsk direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation, and this direction, according to the different reliable Western medias, the Russians are planning to take under control by the mid of September. So we understand that it's impossible and highly unlikely that within the next 10 days the Russians are able to take under control the entire city. We understand that this is not going to happen, but we understand, the Ukrainians understand, and the Russians understand that most likely the battle for Pokrovsk is going to be the main battle of 2024. Furthermore, most likely the Russians will not be able to take under control the entire city by the end of this year. Most likely the battle for this city is going to be finished somewhere in April or May of 2025. So the same story as we used to see in Bakhmut, in Avdiivka, so the same story is going to happen in the Pokrovsk direction. The full-scale offensive of the Russians are going to start somewhere in November, when the night is going to be very long, and they will try to finish the battle by April or March or May of 2025. At the same time, the Ukrainians have announced complete and total evacuation of the city and the territory around. You need to understand that Ukrainians announced the evacuation not because they cares about the lives and people and so on. Currently, the Ukrainians are trying to use people as a shield to protect the Ukrainian convoys, to protect the Ukrainian forces that are currently heading towards the city of Pokrovsk, because the Russians are not bombing and attacking the main roads, the railway stations, the concentration of people in Pokrovsk, because they understand that very likely there are lots of civilians right now. But in a week or in two, this process will be finished, and then the Russians will begin bombing and attacking the city of Pokrovsk with everything they have. FAB 3000, FAB 1500, Iskander's missiles, and so on. Basically, the city would be reduced to ruins, because this is the only option for the Ukrainians, not even for the Russians. The Ukrainians will fight for Pokrovsk as they never fight before. Why is that? Because if we compare, if we analyze the experience of the special military operation, we can come to one conclusion: that since the beginning of the special military operation, the Russians suffered significant losses just 3 or 4 times. The first time when the Russians suffered significant losses was the battle for Mariupol. The second time, the battle for Bakhmut. The third time, the battle for Avdiivka. So the Ukrainians understand that the battle for Pokrovsk, which is much bigger than any city that we have just discussed, the Russians can suffer significant losses, and after the battle for Pokrovsk, the Russians might be exhausted. And even if the Russians are able to take under control Pokrovsk, most likely, and at least according to the NATO plan, the plan of armored forces of Ukraine, the Russians will not be able to continue the special military operation. And now it's also very important to discuss the Pokrovsk operation with the Kursk offensive, because when the Russians realized, according to Ukrainian plan, that they are no longer able to continue their mission deep inside of Ukraine, the Ukrainians will try to change the territory of the Kursk direction for some territories that were captured by the Russians, maybe Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, or maybe some other direction in the vicinity of Kharkiv, or somewhere in the Kherson area. So anyway, the Ukrainians will keep the Kursk as long as possible, and then they will try to change it for some territories that were captured by the Russians. Furthermore, don't forget that currently the Ukrainians have almost stopped their offensive with the Kursk. Now they try to redeploy their forces back to the Pokrovsk, and they're preparing this fortezza for defense. Now let's talk about the situation on the ground, and we're going to talk about the South Donetsk direction, because we received significant number of geolocations and videos, and the Russian sources published a lot of updates, a lot of videos of how they were attacking and storming the village of Klishchiivka. In this video, we can see that offensive operation that led to complete defeat of the Ukrainians. The defense belt of armored forces of Ukraine collapsed completely. The Russians saw almost no resistance from the Ukrainian side. The village was captured, and the Russians raised the flag in the most northwestern outskirts of the settlement. In this video, we can see the Russian soldier who raised the flag, and now we have the Ministry of Defense confirmation. We have the Russian flag in the northwestern part. We have have deep state updates, so no doubts that the village of Prichistovka and the territories around were captured by the Russians as a result of very short battle for this area. Or furthermore, according to the pro-Ukrainian mappers, as a result of clashes during the previous night, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to capture all these fields in the triangle between Novodonetsk, Novomayorsk, and Prichistovka itself. If you remember, yesterday we were talking about the video where we might see how the Ukrainian soldiers were running away from Prichistovka, and today we got additional coordinates. We clarified the coordinates of this video, and in this video we can see the Ukrainians who were running away not from Prichistovka to Zolotaya Niva, but in this video we can see the Ukrainians who were running away from Zolotaya Niva in the northern direction towards the village by the name of Shakhtarskaya. So this is the moment, and according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, as you can see, let's take a look at this update. The village of Zolotaya Niva, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, is currently located in the gray zone. So maybe the Russians have already entered this village as well, and maybe today we're going to receive additional updates. If this information is correct, of course, this is going to be very bad for the Ukrainians. As for Vuhledar, the Russians continue the clearing operation around the city, around the stronghold. They are bombing and attacking the Ukrainian warehouses, ammo depots to the north, west of Vadiane, to the south of Vadiane, to the east of Vuhledar. So the main coal mines, the ventilation systems were bombed by the Russians, but as you can see, without any changes on the ground. As for the changes on the ground, the forces of the 42nd or 79th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine published the video how the Russians were attacking the Ukrainian forces between Paraskovyevka, between Konstantinovka and the village of Pobeda. In this video we can see that the Russians managed to reach this line, this tree line, and based on this video we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. Now let's move further. Let's talk about Maximilianovka. During the previous few days the Russians conducted a lot of attempts to attack the Ukrainian positions, trying to get to the western outskirts of the village, but most of those attacks were repelled by the Ukrainians, and furthermore the Ukrainians conducted, when the Russians were exhausted, the Ukrainians conducted a series of counterattacks, and as a result of Ukrainian counterattacks they managed to restore control over some part of Maximilianovka, and we have the video how the Ukrainians captured some Russian soldiers, several Russian soldiers exactly in this point. Based on this video we have adjusted the map in Maximilianovka in Russian favor. As for the Nivoyskaya cauldron, we still haven't received anything. We don't know for sure what exactly is happening there, whether the Russians are moving, whether the Ukrainians are retreating. So the status, this territory is covered with the fog of war, and we stopped receiving any updates probably 2 or 3 days ago, and the reports that we've been receiving during the previous, it was just a repeat of those reports that we heard 3 days ago. So nothing special, nothing new. Now let's talk about Selydove. As you can see, we have adjusted the map in Ukrainian favor because for third day in a row we've been receiving updates almost every single day of how the Ukrainians were counterattacking and attacking the Russians along the railways that goes from the northern part of the eastern Selydove to the southern part. So today we got additional video. I'll remind you that this is the bridge where the Russian soldiers shown heroic, let's say, action when he saved Russian soldiers. In this video, we can see Ukrainian tank that was creating a barrier. He was creating a barrier below the railway bridge with the purpose to block this territory completely and not to allow the Russians to walk through or to go through below the bridge further in the western direction. So yesterday, let's discuss all these events, all these videos we've been receiving here. For example, a few days ago, on the starting from the 1st of September, we got the video. This is the video of heroic action when the Russian personal carrier was trying to protect the Russian soldiers. This video confirms that the Russians managed to reach this area, but then the vehicle was destroyed by the Ukrainian tank. In this video, we can see the same, let's say, tank that was attacking the Russian positions. And as for the 5th of September, we can see another Ukrainian Ukrainian tank that was creating something like a barrier from the vehicles, Russian vehicles that were destroyed during the battle for this strategical point. So based on all these videos that we've been receiving for the previous few days, we have adjusted the map in Ukrainian favor, and obviously everything to the west of the bridge is under complete Ukraine control. We haven't adjusted the map in the southern part and in the vicinity of the hospital because according to reliable sources, this territory was captured by the Russians, but as I understand, according to all these events, all these geolocations, we can make a conclusion that most likely the Russians were moving something like this, like only along the southern border of the city without entering deep inside of the central part. Furthermore, we continue receiving updates from the most eastern part of Selydove. From this point, today we got another video how the Russians were trying to break through the Ukrainian defense belt that goes along the railways, and another Russian armored vehicle and tank or personal carrier was damaged and destroyed by number of FPV drone strikes. So as I understand, currently this small salient, this small pocket is under complete Ukraine control. We don't know for sure what is the status of the landfill and the telecount of Kursk coal mine, because since the beginning of the battle for this territory, the Russians reported that they captured the area, but we still haven't received even a single geolocation video or photo that can confirm the Russian presence in this area. So most likely today we're going to receive some clarifications, and probably these clarifications are going to be in Ukrainian favor. Now let's move further to Marinovka. We have two videos from this territory. Yesterday we got the video how the Russians were trying to storm the area, but the Russian attack was repelled, and today we got the video how the Ukrainians of the 68th Jaeger Brigade were attacking the Russian infantry with FPV drones in the vicinity of this stronghold. The Russian Son of Anarchy was moving on the bicycles, and they were got by the Ukraine FPV drone operators. So most likely the village of Marinovka probably is in the gray zone or under complete Ukraine control as well. Now let's talk to the west. Let's move to the west of Novogrodovka. The Russian sources published the video how they FPV drone the Ukrainian vehicles to the west of the city, which confirms that this territory is under complete Ukraine control, the territory between the landfill and the village of Lisovka. So now when time comes, when time passed, we start receiving more and more geolocations and updates, and now we understand more or less what is the real situation on the ground. Now let's move to the Toretsk, New York agglomeration. According to different mappers, pro-Ukraine mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions further in the western direction, and we start receiving very interesting updates from pro-Russian sources. The Russians are saying that they managed to improve their positions to the south of Toretsk and to capture this energy facility construction with strongholds around completely, but also the Russian sources reported that most likely there is still safe passage or safe road between the New York Central Park, New York agglomeration and the industrial zone and the village of Nilipovka. So some Russian mappers have already adjusted map back in Ukraine favor, and now the Russians are showing that most likely there is a more or less reliable road that Ukrainians still can use to supply and support their forces inside of the citadel. So let's wait for additional updates, but as we discussed during the previous videos, we agree with this information that the Russians still haven't managed to establish control over the industrial zone. They still haven't raised the flag, and most likely there is an island of resistance from the Ukrainian side. Now let's talk about Klishchiivka, and today we got the confirmation of the things that we've been discussing during the previous few days, that the Russians established complete control over the fields and the trenches and the fortifications to the west of Klishchiivka. In this video, we can see Ukrainian FPV drones that were attacking the Russian forces along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal, and this video was geolocated. This episode was geolocated exactly in this point, and based on this video, based on the reports from very reliable sources, and based on the Russian mappers, we have adjusted this territory under complete Russian control. So this is the current situation. The Ukrainians were cut in two. There are some positions between Ivanovsk and the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal, and between Andreevka and the same canal as well. So now the Russians will focus and they will handle with these both directions, and most likely this is going to be very fast. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Kursk direction, because we have a lot of updates from this territory. We have a lot of changes on the ground. The Russian sources published the video of how they were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces in the village of Spalne. This is something like sabotage and reconnaissance group, maybe something like a rotation of the armored forces of Ukraine. The Russian Russians discovered the movement of Ukrainians and they began bombing and attacking them in this building. The building was geolocated. Based on this video, we have adjusted the contested area back in Ukrainian favor. So this territory was captured by the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians have strong control over this territory. Now let's move further and let's talk about Mala Loknya. Currently, the Ukrainians were completely defeated in Korenivo. So as for the entire Sudzha direction, there are few places with very powerful clashes. So like a very important and strategical battles. One of the battles is the battle for Korenivo, where the Ukrainians were completely defeated. The Ukrainians decided to fall back for regrouping, maybe before more attempts to attack. So this battle, Ukrainians lost this battle. Now another important battle is taking place in the vicinity of Mala Loknya, around the former women prison. And as you can see, according to different mappers, this territory is located in contested area, but it's like different mappers confirmed that this territory was captured by the Ukrainians. So, but just mappers without geolocation. So that's why we are keeping this territory as contested area. But we continue receiving different reports that Ukrainians are saying that the village was captured. The Russians are saying that the Russians managed to restore control. So which confirms that there are very heavy clashes and nobody has strong control over these territories. But today we got a very important video, this one. In this video we can see how the Russians were, after withdrawing the Ukrainian vehicles, the Russians destroyed first one tank, and a second later the Russians destroyed the personal carrier. I watched this video for several times trying to understand how exactly the Ukrainians got to this point, because some sources reported that Ukrainians were attacking using this road of attack and they were moving in the northern direction. But if we take a look at this video once again, we're gonna see that both the Ukrainian tank and personal carrier was moving in the southern direction, so in direction of Mala Loknya, but not from Mala Loknya. So summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that Ukrainians entered this road from Pogribki through Marievka. They entered this highway and they were moving in the southern direction with the purpose to attack the Russian forces in Mala Loknya from behind. But these armored vehicles were discovered by the Russians in this point and they were attacked by FPV drones and destroyed. Based on this video, we came to conclusion that most likely the villages of Pogribki, Marievka and Orlovka were captured by the Ukrainians during the previous days of clashes, and now the Ukrainians are trying to complete the creation of cauldron, the encirclement of the Russians, and the Russians show significant resistance and are not allowing the Ukrainians to complete the battle. So very interesting situation. We don't know for sure the exact number of Russians who are currently located in this area, but probably there are several hundreds of soldiers that Ukrainians are trying to encircle, and Ukrainians are suffering significant losses during these attempts. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.